Okay, this meeting of the Board of Elections will come to order. It is Monday, May 9th, 2022. It is 3:02 PM. Madam Secretary, will you read the roll, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Maderas,
Here.
Vice Chairman Pierce,
Here.
Member D. Simone,
Here.
All right.
Member Johnson, Member Ramos, Member Scholes,
Here.
Member West,
Present.
Executive Director Robert Raposa,
Present.
Legal Counsel Ray McCartchell. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. First item on today's, before we start, this is our first meeting we're here. If you do want to comment, however, you need to be present to do that. So I thought I'd make that announcement today. First item on the agenda, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Pierce, seconded by. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, unanimous vote. Item number 2, the board may discuss and vote to approve the polling locations for the Providence special referendum held on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022. Mr. Raposa, will you report, please?
Good afternoon, honorable members of the board. On April 27th, we received a letter from the Providence Board of Canvassers, which states that the canvassers met on Wednesday, April 27th, and approved 18 polling locations for their upcoming special referendum election to be held on Tuesday, June 7th. The board voted to open one polling location in 12 of the city's 15 defined wards. The local board also voted to open 2 polling locations in wards 1, 4, and 7. The decision to open multiple precincts in those 3 wards that I just mentioned was made to facilitate voting to the voters due to demographics of the city, due to Route 95 and a river. You have a spreadsheet in today's material which depicts the 18 polling places and their locations, which the local board voted to open on June 7th within the city of Providence. Upon careful review of the locations the Providence Board has selected, the staff supports the selections submitted and by the Providence Board of Canvassers. If there are no questions regarding this agenda item, the staff respectfully asks you to approve these 18 polling places.
Do board members have any questions of Mr. Raposa or anyone on the staff?
Madam Chair, move to approve.
I just want to ask one question. Is
Go right
every
ahead.
one of these locations ADA compliant?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
And with that, Mr. West, are you seconding the motion?
I'll second it.
Moved by Mr. D. Simone, seconded by Mr. West to approve the recommendation. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it's unanimous. Thank you, Bob. Item number 3, the board may hear an update from a representative from the Secretary of State's office on the proposed contract with the ES&S, which includes the replacement of the Automark with the Express Vote equipment. And I see we have Mr. Rock here. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman and members of the board. Rob Rock, Director of Elections for Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea. And just a quick update, we are continuously working with the board, ES&S, and purchasing on a contract voting equipment. I still believe that we are on pace to make sure that the equipment is in for the September primary and November general elections, and also to give our offices enough time to get the machines out into the public for an education campaign, which we fully expect to engage in this summer and into the fall so that voters are aware of the new machines that'll be in. But we're just still working on the contract, and that hopefully will be wrapped up very soon.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Rock?
Do we know if the machines are available once we approve the contract?
Yes. Yes, they are available.
That's a good question. Any others?
Delivery would take about how long?
I don't recall. They've provided a line that has met both of ours and the board's approval to make sure that it is in time. I don't remember the exact dates. I can send that to Bob.
I thought it was like the end of June, beginning of July.
It's it's possible that could be correct, yeah.
Sure, they're very aware of our schedule.
They are indeed, yes.
Can you hear me?
Any other questions of Rob? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming. Wow, look who's back.
Yeah. Hey, welcome back.
I bet. Let the record reflect that Dr. Ramos is now present for the meeting. And we are on item number 4. The board may discuss and vote to approve using the express vote as a pilot for emergency voting during the Providence special referendum to be held on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022. Mr. Reposa.
Based on the information that was just presented to you by Rob Rock, the staff of the Board of Elections is asking you to approve the use of the express vote for emergency voting in Providence City Hall for the special election to be held on June 7th. Emergency voting begins on May 18th and continues until 4 p.m. on Monday, June 6th. We will locate 2 express vote machines at City Hall for the voters to use. If a voter chooses not to use the express vote, they will have ballots that will be used as has always been in the past. They will have printed ballots. The voter would be provided a printed ballot. They would mark it and put it into the DS-200. Any voter that wishes to exercise the express vote as a pilot would get the card, they would vote their ballot, and those ballots also go into the DS-200. The ballot will not alter any processes currently defined in Rhode Island general election laws, and that we feel that by doing this, it will give us a baseline and some experience if we are going to come back before this board later this year and ask to have another pilot for the September 2022 statewide primary.
Questions?
No question.
Yes, Mr. Scholes?
Are these machines going to be in each polling place?
They will not be in the polling places for June 7th. They will only be used for emergency voting at City Hall.
So just one machine?
We only have 2, that's why. There will be 2 machines at City Hall because at this time, that's all we have, which ES&S has in their inventory, which you saw when this equipment was demonstrated.
For the record, could we have a description of the difference between the express vote and the ordinary ballot?
The express vote ballot is like a long card where the printed ballot that goes out to the voters, the mail ballots and used in the polls and emergency voting today is a ballot of some similar to what I have in my hand. There is a difference in the ballot, but this is a way for the voters to try it and see if they like it for emergency voting. The express vote will be used going forward to replace our favorite machine, the Automark, in the future.
Any other questions?
Just, Madam Chair, just one.
Yes,
So,
Mr. DeSimone.
Bob, there will be an ordinary, regular machine that's there, as well if the voter chooses to use that other machine.
The DS-200, the one that is absolutely going to be there because all the ballots from the express vote have to be entered into the DS-200. The express vote, like the Automark, does not tabulate. It is only a ballot marking device.
And then lastly, do you and the staff feel that you'll have enough time to train the members of the local board of canvassers to provide assistance with the machine if need be?
We do, and that's why we wanted to try it for this special election coming up on June 7th.
Any other questions? Hearing none, does the board wish to make a motion?
So move.
Moved by Mr. Scholes,
Madam Chair, I will second. I will just ask that, in addition to moving to approve, that we do have, and I would have asked Ray, but we would have our legal counsel weigh in just as to the appropriateness of using this machine, because I know it's the first time we're going to use it. So I would just make my second subject to that if the movement would accept that.
okay, we'll add that to the motion, as long as it's approved by our legal counsel. So we have a motion with a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Unanimous vote. Item number 5, the board may vote to disclose the votes taken by the board members during executive sessions held on June 8th, 2021, June 14th, 2021, regarding the referral to Attorney General Peter Nerona of possible mail ballot violations of Title 17 of the general laws by Robert Nickerson, Paul Krikorian, and Jimmy McCroy. Mr. Reposa.
On June 8th, during the executive session, Board Member Ramos moved to refer the matter to the Attorney General for Jimmy McCroy for further investigation and other possible legal action as warranted. The motion was seconded by Chairman Pierce. Voting in the affirmative were Chairwoman Maderas, Vice Chairman Pierce, and Board Members West, Ramos, Scholes, Johnson, and DeSimone. None opposed. The motion was approved 7-0. On June 14th, 2021, during the executive session, Vice Chairman Pierce moved to refer the matter relating to Paul Krikorian to the Attorney General for further investigation and possible legal action. The motion was seconded by Board Member Scholes. Voting in the affirmative were Chairwoman Maderas, Vice Chairman Pierce, and Board Members West, Scholes, Johnson, and DeSimone. None opposed. The motion was approved 6-0. Board Member Johnson moved to refer the matter of Robert Nickerson to the Attorney General for further investigation and other possible legal action. The motion was seconded by Board Member Scholes. Voting in the affirmative were Chairwoman Maderas, Vice Chairman Pierce, and Board Members West, Scholes, Johnson, and DeSimone. None opposed. The motion was approved 6-0. And that includes the release of the minutes relating to these 3 cases.
Yeah, we should move to disclose those votes from the executive session. Huh?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reposa. At this point, then, the board will vote.
I can hear you, Ray.
Let's hear from
That
you.
was supposed to be, they need to take a motion to release those votes. So they should move to approve the release of the votes taken as you just read.
Okay, which they are going to do now.
Okay.
Yes, were you going to say something, Mr. DeSimone?
I think that maybe the motion should be to ratify the release of.
Thank
those
you.
votes to the
That's
vote.
perfect. And is that a motion?
It is.
It is. Do you have a second to Mr. DeSimone's motion?
I'll second.
So it's moved and seconded to ratify the action taken. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous.
Okay, Ray.
Item number 6.
Okay.
We good? Item number 6, the board may hear a report from Executive Director regarding the Town of Coventry special election. Mr. Reposa.
The Town of Coventry held a special election on Tuesday, May 3rd, to fill a vacancy which existed in School Committee for District 1. On Thursday, February 24th, the Town of Coventry asked your permission via the staff to open 2 of the 4 polls that make up District 1 in Coventry. The 2 polls were to be located within District 1 at the Summit Baptist Church, located at 1176 Victory Highway, and the poll was also to be located at the St. Francis Episcopal Church, located at 132 Peckham Lane. The board approved the requests received from the Coventry Board of Canvassers. On April 11th, the staff, in conjunction with our vendor, Election System and Software, conducted logic and accuracy testing on the voting equipment to be used for the upcoming special election. The testing began at 9 a.m., with a report being printed which showed all the equipment had 0 votes cast upon them. Ballots were entered into the machinery that was going to be used. 4 DS-200 voting machines and 1 DS-850 high-speed mail tabulator was used to perform the testing. Upon printing of the results, the staff compared the totals obtained from counting the individual ballots markings with the totals printed from the voting equipment, and then comparing the tape produced from the voting equipment with the summary report produced from the election system and software network system. The equipment to be used was reset to 0, and a summary report was produced at 9:31 a.m. showing all the equipment had 0 votes cast upon them. The testing of the equipment concluded at that time. On May 3rd, the 2 approved polls opened on time at 7 a.m. In total, 368 of the 5,381 voters in this district cast a ballot in this special election. Of the ballots cast, 347 were voted at the polls on Election Day. 17 were voted in emergency ballot during the 20-day period preceding the day of the election, and 4 voters cast a mail ballot. The results of the election does not qualify for a recount, and the results were Anna Isabel R. Doss Reese Kudu, 233, and Bethany A. Chatterley, 134. 1 voter cast a ballot without marking it, and it was recorded as an undervote. During the time the polls were open, 2 members of the Board of Election staff were assigned to Coventry to assist with any issues that may occur. The morning of the election, after the polls were open, a problem occurred with an automark, surprise, surprise, at the St. Francis Episcopal Church, and was replaced by staff member Jacob Ganser. Jan Badmerzowski supported the election mid-afternoon until the results were transmitted to Joe Vitale from Election System and Software, who was located here at the Board of Elections. Other than the automark replacement, I have no other issues to report. I would like to share with you that during the course of this election, I visited the Coventry Board of Canvassers and also the 2 polling places during the afternoon to speak to the poll workers about the processes we have put forth and obtain any information they would like to share. And that concludes my update to you of the May 3rd Coventry special election for school committee in District 1.
Thank you, Mr. Reposa. Did any of those poll workers have anything that we could bring back and make changes or suggestions that would be helpful?
Well, it was interesting. The first polling place I went into, I, as you know, have not been doing poll worker training since 2014. And when I went in, this woman immediately knew who I was, says to me, "I'm going to give you a hard time as I have for years." I said, "Okay." But she told me that we had to get rid of the automark. She said that automark is an awful piece of equipment and is nothing but trouble. I was happy to tell her we were in the process of entering into a new contract with ES&S to replace the automark, and that this would be the last time she would be seeing it. When I went to the other place, there was actually 2 poll workers that were I had trained years ago. And I also answered any questions they had and shared with them the changes that have actually occurred over the years.
Excellent, very good. Any questions of Mr. Reposa on his report? Let the record reflect that Mrs. Johnson joined the meeting at 3:18. Okay. Thank you, Bob, for that. The next item on the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I would like to recuse myself because Brian is a relative of mine and I just want to recuse myself from that issue.
okay, Dr. Ramos has recused himself from participating in item number 7 on the agenda. Item number 7, The board may discuss and vote on the appeal of the campaign finance fines by Brian Castro pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 17-25. Should we hear from you first, or should we hear from Isa? or-
Isa will be,
Isa?
Isa will be joining us.
Isa, could you come forward, please? Isa Birchfield, and she's going to explain, and we will hear from you, sir, but we'd like to hear from our, thank you.
Thank you. Isa Birchfield from Campaign Finance. Mr. Brian Castro ran in 2010 for state senator unsuccessfully. He also ran in 2014 for East Providence City Council successfully as well. We finally were able, he only filed one report. If you look at the history, he was delinquent on the 2010, 28 day before primary report, which was the only report he filed. The fine was revoked on appeal. For 2010 campaign, he loaned himself $900 of loan proceeds, which were fully expended in the 2010, 28 days before primary period. There was no private contributions received. We only knew of this because we found out about only having spent that money when he filed the report on April 1st, 2022, which was 11 years later. For 2014, when he ran for office, there was no money raised or spent. Him and I dissolved the account on April 1st, 2022, effective with the 2014 Q4 report. For consideration, he's looking for an appealing the penalties assessed for. There were 48 reminders to file sent by first-class mails. We sent him 48 notices of non-compliance that were sent by first-class mail. There were 48 notices of non-compliance sent by certified mail. And on 9/11/2019, a subpoena was successfully served to Castro's mother, who resides at the same address. He was non-responsive. Again, he's seeking for a reduction of fines and fees.
Okay. Any questions,
I have a couple questions.
Mr. Scholes?
What is the cost of the subpoenas and postage on this?
So for the total cost for the mailing and the constable was $348. Yes, that's the total cost.
And there, I caught up that he was behind accounting.
48 reports, yes.
Yeah, 48 reports.
Yes.
And would you have 48
Yes.
reports? And the cost fee for not filing a report is $25?
For each late fine, after we sent the certified mail, it's $2 per day until the report is filed.
But the cost is $25 per report.
Yes,
So the 48 reports are $25, that's $1,200.
yes,
Right.
yes,
And then it came up to $209,000. You added the $2 a day
yes,
for all that. That
yes,
includes every single day.
yes.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Lisa? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Castro, we'll hear from you, if you'd like to explain.
Good afternoon, distinguished members of this board. I guys for my keeping up with this matter. However, somehow I'm also going to plead ignorance and some life hardships that had happened to me. I want to share with you. First of all, the report that, if there was a report filed in 2010, I want you to know that I have no idea, and I'm being honest, who filed that report. I was oblivious and asked to run for office, and I did run for that office, but all I did personally was knock on doors and run for that office. I honestly wasn't aware of anybody filing any report, including myself, which is just my ignorance, and I'm being honest with you. All I have is my honesty. In 2014, I was prepared to run. I suffered a stroke. But I suffered.
Don't apologize.
And, I was blind in one eye for 6 weeks. My sight came back overnight. Now I can stop crying because he is God.
That's
My
That's
sight
good.
came back in my left eye after 6 weeks of having this stroke. I still had problems with my arm. And after this, I went and get my health checked. So let me find out what's going on with me fully.
Mhm.
So I go and have a series of tests, and now I find out I have colon cancer in 2014 also. So I have colon cancer surgery in July. Today, I stand before you, I'm cancer-free. I suffered some memory loss with my stroke. I suffered a deep depression until, lo and behold, I fall from a ladder in 2020 at 11 feet, shattered my foot. 3 surgeries later, I'm here, I'm seeing a counselor, and I'm starting to get myself together a little bit, and I'm feeling a lot better. But it was the roughest 7 years of my life.
Sure.
And here I am, standing strong before you, and all I ask is for you to consider the circumstances of my life.
Mr. Castro, thank you for your candor, number one. And certainly we're glad to see that you're here among us and you're doing well under the circumstances. And obviously you did have a very rough time. So we appreciate your being here today to explain all of that. The board members have any questions of Mr.
I
Castro?
have a couple of questions.
Mr. Scholes?
How old are you?
I'll be 61 years old this month.
What is your employment status?
Excuse me?
What is your employment status?
My employment, I'm on disability now,
You say disability, SSI or
SSDI.
SSDI? How long have you been on SSDI?
I was just granted SSDI. The last 2 years I was collecting, well, the last 6 months I was collecting GPA. I was a deputy sheriff for 30 years. I'm ashamed of nothing. I have my background. I after my stroke and colon cancer, pulled my retirement, tried to put it into a business which was failed miserably, I might add, at a large expense, putting me in no man's land.
Now, do you recall receiving the reports, the notices from?
I wasn't living at the address where the reports went. Even when my mother signed for that report, my mother's 82, going to be 8. Well, she's 83 now. She didn't tell me about this, but I know that those letters were going there. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I never saw one letter from Board of Elections, but I honestly just was so stuck that it was like the least of my worries.
Yes.
And now I understand that it was a very serious matter, and I'm not taking it lightly.
Tell me, were you living with your mother in the last few years?
No, I have her address. I was living with a female friend of mine who I'm no longer, now I'm actually living at that address, but that's only been for the last 6 months, I'd say.
Your testimony is that the letters went to your mother's address and you did not receive the letters?
I didn't receive the letters. She may have given them to me, and I may have just, but like I say, I was suffering like a depression that passed what you might be able to understand personally.
Right.
And I understand that because I would never understand if it weren't me.
Well,
Sure.
did you ever reach out to the Board of Elections, the campaign?
Not until after I started seeing this person, talking to this counselor, and I started trying to address some of these things that I know that I have hanging around. And I contacted Issa, who has been nothing but fabulous with me. And I promised her that I'd continue addressing. Every time I've told her I'd be here, I've been here, I've been in touch, I'm standing here because of her. After reaching out to her and seeing how, like, she was more than welcoming and more than willing to help me. I came in here, I did all the reports with her, and I found that I was dodging something that I shouldn't have dodged. To be frank with you and honest with you, it's all I have.
Mhm.
And she can tell you, I've showed up every time and called her every time that she asked me to. I've been,
Well, we're glad you're complying with the law. It's our duty to make sure all candidates do that.
I apologize, and I'm gonna be, upfront with you further than that. I may plan on running for city council, and I promise you this, I'll never not dot an I or cross a T again as far as this board of election goes.
But right now, there are 28 reports that are not filed, and it's $25. I mean, can you afford to pay?
I can't,
Can you afford to pay?
I obviously can't, I'll pay whatever this board decides I need to pay. However, I can't pay it today, and I'll need
We
to pay it
understand.
in pieces, but I will respectfully honor anything that you decide. I'll make sure I do it on a monthly basis, whatever is required of me.
Right, well, the amount is
I can't pay
$29,000. It's not proportional to this thing, so we're
course
not
not.
interested in collecting that money. We're just interested in collecting a little bit to make sure that there's compliance with the law.
I fully understand that, and I fully would expect that. I obviously can't afford to pay $209,000, which I'm glad I didn't hear till today, or maybe I still wouldn't be sitting next to you here.
That amount of money that you should spend. Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions of this gentleman before we proceed?
I'd like to say I admire your courage for being here and explaining the situation to you, and I can understand in part what you've gone through. Hopefully, the situation has resolved itself. And I personally would be, in view of your courage and your forthcomingness here, I would be happy if the fine was reduced to the amount that we have actually paid to cover all these notices, which is $348.
I thank you for those.
And I would make that a motion.
So we have a motion then for Mr. Castro.
Just for discussion, Madam.
Yes,
Is the total's $348?
that's for the mailings
So if we should
and the
just-
constable.
If the movement in the second would, I just would make a suggestion that maybe we just suspend that fine rather than dissolve it, just so that in the future we have some leverage, not with this candidate, but different candidates coming in, rather than just see the boards eliminate the fine totally. I would just say we would suspend the fine and just collect.
The total fine or the,
I mean, I'd be willing to suspend the total fine, but that's up to the members of the board.
So you're suggesting suspend the fine but collect the cost?
I will support whatever motion the board makes. I'm actually suggesting suspending all of it. But again, it's up to.
I think
it's
that
up to
was
what-
the intent in the motion, so you're right to make it clearer. I think that's a good suggestion. So, Vice Chair, that was your intention as well, right? Correct, to suspend the fine and to collect the actual amount,
The cost,
the
yeah.
cost.
Yes.
And so that was part of the.
That's fine. I mean, I'll go along
It
with
was-
whatever the board
Okay,
wants to do.
so that was part of the motion, correct? Okay, so we have a motion, and who seconded the motion?
Jenny did.
Mrs. Johnson.
For discussion.
It
I
does-
think that's,
Discussion, Mr. West?
very good. I just so that people understand you have a responsibility not only to yourself, but to people that you're running for election, but also to the state. These are laws that have to be followed. You said you were a law officer at one time?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, and you understand the rule of law,
I do.
correct?
I do.
And this was part of the law. But just so that people understand, you have a responsibility. And if you run again, you have to make sure.
I promise you, sir, I will. I will. I will dot every I and cross every T involved with the election. I want to tell you something, that when you go and you run for office, somebody says, listen, I want you to put your name in for this. This is how this happened with me. I went and I did that. I had no idea, sir, of the amount of records. I didn't. And I was a deputy sheriff at the time. I had no idea. I'm just letting you know that this is the truth I'm telling you. I had no idea.
And maybe that's something we had a shortcoming on, I don't know, but you run again, go to Ms. Birchfield and make sure you understand the rules and regulations.
I'm well aware of where this building is at this time, and I'll be ready to come ask any question I might not have an answer to in the future. I assure you that. It's not a joking matter. I understand that at this point. Nothing to ignore and nothing to fear here.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? So we have a motion by Vice Chair Pierce, seconded by Mrs. Johnson to suspend the fine, but to put the request of $348 for Mr. Castro to repay for the services that we rendered here. And do we have any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's a unanimous vote of the board, and Dr. Amos has recused himself, so it's a 6-0 vote.
I want to thank you all for your consideration of this matter.
Thank you for coming, sir. Okay. Next item. Item number 8. The board may vote to meet in executive session to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4246(5), subsection A, subsection 1. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Scholl, seconded by Mr. West. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Unanimous vote. Item number 9. The board may vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4246(5), subsection A, subsection 4, and 1725(5), subsection A, 7I, to discuss and/or vote on possible violations of campaign finance laws and 2 campaign finance matters. Do we have a motion to go into closed session? Moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Scholl. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous vote. So we will go into closed session at 3:40 PM. minutes of the executive session.
Motion to open session, motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
Moved by Mr. D. Simone, seconded by Mr. Scholl. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Reposa, would you report on the action taken in closed session, please?
Madam Chairwoman, an audit was performed by Richard Thornton, Director of Campaign Finance, on the campaign finance activity of Robert Morris. Mr. Thornton recommended to the board the entry of a consent order with Mr. Morris. A motion was made by Board Member Scholes and seconded by Board Member West to adopt the consent order as recommended by Mr. Thornton. Voting in the affirmative were Chairwoman Maderas, Vice Chairman Pierce, Board Members D. Simone, Johnson, Ramos, Scholes, and West. The motion passed 7-0.
Thank you very much. We have no other business at this time. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 4:30.
See you, Ray.
See you, Ray.
Take care, Ray.
Feel better, Ray.